Before we begin, a quick content warning. This episode includes discussion of mental health and suicide. If this brings anything up for you, we want you to know support is available. In the U.S., you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're outside the U.S., please check your local resources. From the outside, it looked like success. Award-winning restaurant, a popular cookbook, countless magazine features, a chef in high demand at the top of his game. But behind the heat of the kitchen, Jonathon Sawyer was struggling with his mental health and with alcohol addiction.
I feel like while there are moments inside of my life that are tons of moments that are filled with joy, they're almost all based around my family and my children and sort of the joy you get of being a parent. But in terms of myself, I couldn't even look myself in the mirror. You know, the height of my addiction, the height of my depression, the height of my sort of personal sadness came at moments where people would probably look from the outside and say, this guy's got everything in the world that he wants.
And that struggle nearly destroyed him. But Sawyer didn't give up. After getting sober, he launched a foundation to support mental health and recovery, using his platform to help others who might feel alone. Today, Jonathon Sawyer, the successful chef of Kindling restaurant in Chicago, shares what he calls a cautionary tale, a story about pressure, addiction, recovery, and why he's chosen to talk about it so others don't feel alone. This is his story.
At Mariano's, we love how every product has a story, and some of the best stories come from right here in Chicago.
That's why we started We Love Local. It's our way of shining a light on small businesses and farmers and food makers who pour their hearts into what they do.
When you see a local item on our shelves, you know you're supporting someone's dream and keeping our community strong.
From family recipes passed down for generations to brand new ideas born in neighborhood kitchens, We Love Local brings those stories to your table. Because when local thrives, we all do.
Mariano's is a proud sponsor of the Supper with Sylvia podcast.
Okay, Jonathon Sawyer, so excited to have you on my podcast. I've interviewed you many times, but this is the first, and we get to hear the real Jonathon Sawyer today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Sylvia. It's such a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. Okay, you are fresh off of a Food Network win, so I just want to start with that, okay? You have received quite the following because of all these Food Network shows that you've been doing and your social media, but the latest which was huge was this 24 in 24, fresh off a victory off of that. Explain to everybody how that worked. That looked like one of the most grueling competitions I've ever seen.
Yeah, truly. There isn't a comparison in terms of culinary competition that exists yet. It's by far out of all of the, I don't know, I feel like I counted the other day, 21 different shows of culinary competition I've done. It is by far the hardest. But the idea is that 24 chefs, all with their own sort of prestigious pedigree and training and sort of lifestyle, show up at a former IKEA in Hollywood or just outside of Hollywood. And 24 hours later, only one person leaves the arena. All of the others are eliminated through a process of challenges that really emulate the 7 different phases of what it's like to own a restaurant, between collaboration and artistry and teamwork and risk-taking and et cetera, et cetera.
That had to be exhausting, right? I read somewhere where I think you said that a lot of times behind the scenes, people didn't realize you guys were exhausted and maybe even thought about, I don't know if I could do this anymore.
Totally. I think there's a moment for everybody inside of that competition, especially those that made it far, where you were like, well, maybe 4 episodes is enough for me to be on and I can just go home now. You know, it really makes you question the why of how you're doing it. But you know, like I think it's the brilliance of the show is that exhaustion and the honesty that comes from it, you know, as opposed to there's a lot of non-scripted TV or unscripted TV out there that maybe uses producers and production to really, or alcohol, to create the drama that everybody, craves watching at home. But when you get to a place where you are sort of uh, borderline hallucinating and you have taste fatigue
Oh
and your
my gosh.
emotions are drained out, the truth comes out on the
Yeah.
camera, and that's really what people, want to see.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things that I love about you is what you see is what you get, and your story is so incredible. But I thought it would be fun to start with this with the 24 and 24 because I know a lot of people were talking about that, and I was so excited to have you on my show the day after it was announced that you won. So here you are in Chicago. You're at Kindling Restaurant. It's an open flame, delicious restaurant. I had the honor of being there when you guys officially opened in 2023. It's the Willis Tower, but for me, will ever be the Sears Tower. Tell everybody about Kindling. What do you have going on, and what do you want them to know about the restaurant, besides the fact that it's absolutely delicious, Jonathan?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that we wanted to be a part and a heart of the renaissance of the Loop, right? For decades, maybe people have thought about it as like quote unquote the uncool district inside of Chicago. And I feel like we had an opportunity coming out of sort of where we were in 2022 and 2021 and 2020 to really change the perception in this iconic location, right? As you call it, the Sears Tower. I'm not calling it that. It's the Willis Tower. Contractually, I'm obligated to say that. but at the end of the day, it is, the second busiest tourist attraction inside of the city. It is, anywhere between 8 and 11 million people walk through our front doors every year. So what I think most people would look at as sort of maybe a I want to put this politely, right? Like not your typical Chicago audience. We
Yeah.
viewed it as an opportunity to really introduce them to what, Jonathan Sawyer's food is and what wood-fired
Mhm.
food can be. And 4 of the last 5 restaurants I opened were all wood-fired. I really am drawn to the hearth, and we had the opportunity here to set up the second largest hearth in the city of Chicago, a 13-foot long island suite that could hold 9 cooks at one time, depending on how many people are inside of our restaurant. And we make it a focal point in terms of design, what you see, flavor, what you taste, and most certainly what you smell.
Yeah, well, the restaurant itself is beautiful, but I think the key is to be able to sit around that
Yeah.
hearth to watch you in action. Is makes the food you just appreciate it even more. Besides the fact that it's good anyway, but to see you in action and what happens, I mean, you are all in there.
Truly. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
those that know, they see me there every day. You know what I mean? And I think that there's a good amount of friendship and kinship that I've
Mhm.
found between sort of our regulars inside of the tower and near the tower that come in and sort of sit and kibitz with me while I'm working there.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about your career and what brought you here. I love your story. I understand you were an engineering student who realized that you loved the kitchen. You get involved in the culinary world, and I was seeing that you were at the Biltmore in Miami, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I was there a few times while he was working there. But your career spans Miami, it spans Rome, it spans New York City, and here you are in Chicago. I know you were born in Chicago, but you're really from Cleveland, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was born in McHenry. I lived here for years, sort of passively became a Cubs and Blackhawks fan, but I grew up in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I turned 18, I left, and sort of my career started to take form. As a Midwestern teenager, I got a job in a Tex-Mex restaurant, and actually over a wood-fired mesquite grill, and that's kind of where I initially got drawn to the culinary field. My mother and my grandmothers were both great cooks. They were great gardeners. I had a great respect for the frugality of the Eastern European Midwestern kitchen, but it took the experience of opening restaurants and sort of realizing what I didn't want for me to truly fall in love with the
Mhm.
career.
So, what would you say for you? Which spot was the game changer for you where you decided, not only am I good at this, but I want to go 1,000% in this direction and eventually open up my own place?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great statement, and I think there's two disparate things inside of there. I don't know. It took me a long time to to be honest with myself and say you're good at this, right? But early on, I did have an aha moment, and I was working at a restaurant in Dayton, Ohio, while I was going to engineering school, and I was kind of not enjoying my externship as it was, programming AutoCAD coordinates and sort of doing systems analyst stuff. And I was loving my culinary job at the time. And this boss who I had, who was classically trained and a bit of a, let's just put it in air quotes, old fashioned chef, a bit of a bit of a brutalizer, came over to me one time and tasted the mignonette I was making, and he said, John, you are not bad at cooking. And I was just like, yes, chef, oui, chef, thank you, chef. But I didn't show the appreciation in the moment. But I was like, he's right. You know what? Forget about it. I'm going to drop out of college and I'm going to go to culinary school. And that was sort of the next step I took was, just leaving the traditional sort of college system and going to culinary school.
Mm-hmm. So your career takes you back home, and you end up opening. You end up working in Cleveland, and then you end up opening Greenhouse Tavern and a few other spots, which, wow, that was a restaurant that people still talk about today. In fact, I was at the Chef's Garden, Farmer Lee Jones in Ohio a couple of weekends ago, and I'm sitting at the table having dinner there, and people in Cleveland are very proud of you, and they're also kind of very attached. And they were saying, how's Jonathon Sawyer doing? We used to love his restaurant, and we were so sad when it closed. I know there's a lot of history behind all of this, and I want to get into that with you, but tell me about the concept of Greenhouse Tavern, because you guys did receive a lot of awards. It was during that time you became a James Beard winner. And I mean, the list goes on and on. Sustainability was important to you. Farm to table was important to you. Tell me about your memories of Greenhouse Tavern and that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got to thank my two mentors who I had prior to it for the vision that sort of brought the Greenhouse Tavern into fruition. It was working for Charlie Palmer, the pioneer of New American cooking and big farm supporter that he was in New York, and Chef Michael Simon. Both chefs I sort of opened restaurants for and worked with and helmed, and really learned a lot about what I loved about this restaurant world and what I loved about a good restaurant. And you fast forward a little bit, and I'm having my first child and then second child, and that's what ultimately left, sort of allowed me to leave New York and move back to Cleveland. And I just was moved by this opportunity to sort of change the world or change the perception of a wasteful industry, even if it is just one address and one location. And that's where the idea behind the Green Restaurant Association, the GRA, and the Greenhouse Tavern becoming the first certified green restaurant in the state of Ohio. Mm-hmm. And that was through the beginning of the building process and then part of sort of the sourcing process. And it was an annual third-party audit that sort of allowed us to keep that, accreditation. And I think it was kind of, the idea was complicated back then in terms of how you execute it, but it's a fairly simple idea now. Like, how do I take all of this, all these dollars that are coming in my front door and put as many of them in our backyard as we possibly can? And I think that there's items that we maybe take for granted now, but there was just the idea of making an all Ohio beef burger. Like, it's the simplest thing, but there's a reason why burgers, French fry, pizza, these are the number one selling menu items in America for decades now. And it's because it's a comfort that some people look at and they think about, but there wasn't a way for me to source that beef in 2006. There wasn't an opportunity for me to say, no, I want the cows to be birthed here, raised here, slaughtered here, butchered here, and then delivered to my door, right? Inline that entire process. I don't want them to be from Iowa and then processed in Kansas and then, butchered in Louisville and then shipped up by 90, I-71 to me in Cleveland. I want this entire thing to come here. So it took a while. And I know I'm just talking about one menu item, but you can extend that throughout to the bakeries and to the vegetables. But, once you have that system set up and once you sort of understand, what quality control you're looking for, it makes it really easy to replicate that. And the biggest and most I think gratifying moments for me is knowing how many other restaurants were like, that's a good idea, I'm going to do that. Or how many other former cooks, sous chefs left me and were like, Yeah, I'm just going to use DJ as well. And I'm going to do the same, watching these farmers grow from 0 employees and an unmarked van to 15 to 20 to 30 to 50 employees and multiple delivery vehicles. That was the whole goal, right? That was the whole point, besides being a place to meet and a place to make memories.
Well, that was 2008 that you guys opened, and you're absolutely right. 2008,
Yeah,
the whole farm to table concept. I mean, you kind of really were in the forefront, which is why I think it was 2019 you were voted most important restaurant in the country by Esquire magazine because of what you were doing with sustainability and farm to table. So let's talk about what was going on in your life at the time, because you are very active and very vocal about your struggles with sobriety,
totally.
alcoholism, whatever. So I want to talk about that because this was all going on at the same time. You're creating this empire of restaurants, 4 restaurants in that area. What's going on in your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's complexity to being an addict and alcoholic and coming from a family that has many alcoholics, right? And you don't necessarily realize the complexity of your situation while you're sitting in it. And while I think from the outside, people can assume that this guy's rich and this guy's happy because he's got a book and he's got awards and he's got restaurants, it couldn't be any further from the truth, you know? I feel like while there are moments inside of my life that are tons of moments that are filled with joy, they're almost all based around my family and my children and sort of the joy you get of being a parent. But in terms of myself, I couldn't even look myself in the mirror. The height of my addiction, the height of my depression, the height of my sort of personal sadness came at moments where people would probably look from the outside and say, this guy's got everything in the world that he wants, right? This career success combined with, absolute, the absolute opposite in terms of personal emotions and running from the feelings and imposter syndrome and you name it, I felt it. And I ran and I hid from all of those emotions in drowning them and in drugs and alcohol, and it took me the ultimate rock bottom, right? After my father passed, it got even more intense, and it really took a 6 month period of sort of total, annihilation for me to check myself into rehab and spend 30 days away, and then do an outpatient program for another 60 days to sort of find the happiness that I now find every day, and find the opportunity that I find myself in every day, where it is. I can be honest and say that, like, this is every morning I get up and I say my prayers and I read my book and I look myself in the mirror, and I'm happier than I've ever been before. And I'm more present for my wife and my children and my employees than I ever have been before. And it's just through the grace of sobriety and reflection that I've sort of found that. And while I'm most certainly evangelizing now, I'm only talking for myself, right? There's a lot of people out there, let's say 50%, 70% of the population that can handle alcohol and drugs in a recreational way that's fine for them. But there's a ton of people that cannot and are scared to talk about it and are scared of the stigma associated with alcoholism or addiction or depression or, you name it. And it just kind of reached a point, especially as we started Sylvia with 24 and 24, where I didn't want this to be a part of my life I didn't share with everybody, right? I didn't want to be front facing one thing and sort of behind closed doors another thing. I just wanted to be honest about it all. And I wanted it to kind of be out there. And, most certainly some people look at it as a fault. Some people look at it as a superpower, but really the goal is like, is there a younger version of Jonathon Sawyer out there who now can have a sober hero to look up to? Is there a version of me out there that can look up and say, I don't have to buy cocaine from my first kitchen manager at Houlihan's, who will name nameless, in order to be cool to try to be on the opening team of the Nest restaurant, right? Like I don't need to be a part of that. It's a cautionary tale, not a sort of guideline of how you become successful. And I feel like that's where the opportunity for me is.
I want to talk about this even more because it's a big issue in the restaurant world. But you were talking about when you hit rock bottom and your dad passed away. What year was that,
That
roughly?
was 2021 or 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 2020 is when it started. 2021 is when it really is when so I'm 39 months sober now.
Okay.
So
I want to
yeah.
ask you about that too, because while you were in Cleveland, you have all, like you said, everybody's going, oh my gosh, this guy is brilliant. He has this amazing restaurant. He's won all these awards. He's rich. He's got this beautiful wife and 2 children. His life is perfect. And then all of a sudden the news comes out. Jonathon Sawyer is closing the Greenhouse Tavern. There's lawsuits that are all of a sudden you're on the front. You're a big deal in Cleveland. So when this starts happening, you make the news.
Yeah.
There's lawsuits involved. They're saying bills were not paid. Was this all happening while you were struggling with drug and alcohol addiction?
I mean, yeah, there's a corollary for the two, but at the end of the day, we're just like millions of other businessmen in America, right? We just are businesses. We may have created a ton of great food and a ton of great memories, but we didn't understand and we never had the partnerships that allowed us to run a great business on the black and white sort of fiscal P&L front, right? In terms of allegations and lawsuits, that happens. That's natural, right? Every employee was paid. Almost every single farmer was paid, especially the smaller ones. We made sure of that at our own detriment. But we're a couple broadliners who are large multinational corporations who have millions and millions of dollars not paid in full. They most certainly weren't. That's
Mhm.
what bankruptcy is there for, businesses that make mistakes. And we most certainly did. I'm not here using drugs and alcohol as an excuse for actions that happened in the past. I'm here just to say I did what I did to get to where I am. And I'm thankful for the person that I am today. And that's it, right? At the end of the day, everybody from our president, who's filed 27 times, to your neighbor have used this opportunity to sort of restart their lives. And we most certainly did as well.
This is a great place to take a break, and we'll be right back. If you're enjoying Supper with Sylvia, please like and share with family and friends. And also leave a comment. We love and need your support. Thanks for listening to Supper with Sylvia. So when you close your restaurant, let's see, is that
2020.
2020. Okay. So
March of 2020 is
yes,
sort
I'm
of when it.
sure you remember that
Yep.
well. What was that like for you? That had to be devastating. I want you to go back
Yeah,
in time, okay?
sure. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
want you to remember the day you made that difficult decision. I know it didn't happen in one instant because I know this was a process, but I want
Yeah.
you to take me back. What was that like to have to close this restaurant that was your baby, your passion, that had gotten such praise, and finally you had to shutter it?
Well, I don't know if it I think that's simplifying it. I think that the writing was on the wall for 18 months, 2 years before. At the end of the day, I didn't come from money and I don't have money. So we leveraged the one good business in order to open 3 or 4 bad businesses around it. And the equity inside of that business that we had built over years, sadly, just ended up going to the banks and the landlords of other businesses that failed. And when you talk about the closing of the greenhouse, there most certainly was emotions involved in it, but there wasn't an opportunity or an outlet for that to live on
Mhm.
that we hadn't sort of already explored, whether it was selling it to employees or new investor or partner here. I mean, the house of cards was stacked up so high that the writing had been on the walls for a while.
Mhm.
So it most certainly was emotional and sad, but there was also a little bit of like disdain and I'm over it and I don't
Yeah.
want to do it anymore. Right. I didn't want to I didn't, there was a moment that was like, of course, as you said, sadness, but there's also a moment where I was like, I'm good. We did what we could here, and
Mhm.
I don't see, I don't see an opportunity for us to continue it. And there really wasn't, given where the banks were,
Yeah.
and where the landlords were.
Well, I know that that's something you can look back on and be very proud about. I want to go back to the drug and alcohol addiction. It's not something I want to harp on, but I know it's something that's very important to you because you announced on the show 24 and 24, I think you won $50,000 that you were going to use that money to help start a foundation. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, I wanted, as I said in the beginning here, it's really important for me to sort of not live two different lives anymore, be honest with everybody and myself included. And when I won 24 and 24, I started the Sawyer Foundation. It's a 501c3, based on really eliminating the stigma and propagating the positive messaging of what this industry can be and doesn't have to be. So I know there's people out there and I know that there's people looking for help. And that first step is the hardest step to take. And whether it's figuring out how to take off time from your job or figuring out how to find the appropriate rehab facility or figuring out how to use FMLA to sort of protect yourself or unemployment or disability, those are really complicated places, especially when you're in the heat of addiction. So we want to start to spread messaging that allows people to understand what their rights are and what their opportunities are in that first step. And the second step is sort of reintegration to society and to the job. And that was a very, trepidatious time for me. I was really scared to go back to work in this industry when I was, sort of freshly sober. And we want to be a resource to people around the country inside of this industry that are looking to do that. And for me, I think that every show that I do going forward, we're going to donate a portion of those proceeds to the Sawyer Foundation. And we're going to have opportunities for other people to sort of help us spread the good word and spread the messaging of it.
What is it about the restaurant industry? I think you could probably say that about every business, but you guys kind of do have a reputation for, drugs and alcohol, mental health issues. Some chefs have said to me that people who go into the restaurant world are kind of misfits. How would you describe that? We think of people like, just recently, Anne Burrell's suicide, which was just a shock to everybody. Anthony Bourdain, the list goes on and on. What's going on in that kitchen?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, listen, I think if we had the answer, we'd be working on the solution, right? I think if we honestly knew why and where the correlation of mental wellness or lack thereof and addiction to the restaurant industry is, I think we'd be working on it. I don't know. And I don't think it's binary like that either. I think most certainly Anne's story, who I know really well, and I was on shows with her. I had known her for ever, is really sad. And Tony's story is just as sad. And I think there's a part of Tony that, unbeknownst to everybody, was very wishes that he could have written a foreword or a prologue to Kitchen Confidential to warn people that it was a cautionary tale about his life as opposed to a guidebook for how to become a cool guy who runs restaurants. Right. And the salaciousness and the addiction in that book most certainly lionized the side of the industry that maybe got exemplified afterwards. I'm not saying it was part and parcel or causation, but, I read that book and was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to, this is how I get to be one of my heroes. And I don't believe that's the truth anymore. And I think a lot of us don't believe it's the truth anymore. And, I think back to the sort of cause or the why the industry has exponentially larger amounts of addiction and mental illness. I think that in order to be a hospitalitarian and someone who is anticipatory in their service, there's a different sort of drive inside of you. There's a different insatiable want for acceptance and attention and, external validation that not many people have. And I can't say psychologically where that comes from for people, right? I can't say why you have this insatiable drive to make those single serving, multi-serving guests love you and like you and thank you and publicly thank you. But I think that's a big part of it. And I also think it's an industry like a lot of the arts where you don't necessarily have to even graduate from high school in order to get a toehold in this career. career, right? And I think that's the beauty of the industry that I really love is like you can be someone who is ex-military or formerly incarcerated or a college graduate or someone who just has a GED and you can be successful in this field. And I think that's the part of the field that really needs to be appreciated, especially when we think about the future of jobs. It is a great place, given the right opportunity, to reintegrate people to the society and to the workforce and to really what like a melting pot of human beings can be,
Hmm.
right? When you think about this digital world and how removed we're getting from our neighbors and our streets and our friends, this place, right now there is 33 people behind me, all of them from different nationalities. Some of them, most certainly were a majority minority restaurant, but we're all sort of working together as a team cohesively, no matter what our beliefs are, religion wise, or nationality is, or sexual preferences. We're all back there making sure that the next 400 plates of food that will go out over the next 3.5 hours, are all part of somebody's great day. And
Yeah.
I think that's the part that's really important.
Yeah. Diverse, big crowds. I have to say, you're talking about your kitchen right now because Kindling, um, tell people why they should come eat at your restaurant. I know during the weekdays it's happening, like it's a hot lunch spot because everybody's
Truly.
downtown, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a unique celebration of wood fire that happens here that doesn't happen anywhere else. And I think it's everything from sort of just enjoying a great burger, as we started our conversation with,
Mm-hmm.
to, splurging a little bit and having some YouTube prawns from Skull Island. But the idea that we allow this white oak from Wisconsin to really be the narrative thread that ties everything together is really what Kindling's all about. And for me, restaurants like Kindling, it's really important to sort of meet people where they are. And I think a lot of people come in and they have no idea that the chef of the restaurant is, on Food Network or
Yeah.
a James Beard Award winner. They're just like, I like the steaks here. And I think the inverse is also true. A lot of people who would never have come down here before are like, oh, it's the guy I saw on 24 and 24
Right.
or on Grudge Match last night. And I want to go down and see what his restaurant's all about.
Yeah.
So I think the convergence of all this being in the second tallest building in the city and the icon that is the Willis Tower makes it all that much more fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. Okay. Speaking of which, let's have some fun. Okay. I want to know, I'm just going to ask you some questions. It's not necessarily rapid fire, but you can answer them. You don't have to think too much. I want to know a few things
Sure.
about you. Number one, your favorite go-to spot in Chicago. Like, you've had a long day at work over a week and you're like, okay, I'm going to my spot. What's your spot?
My favorite place to go is on Saturday or Sunday morning, go down to Mitsuya Market. It's the Japanese market and debachika. And they roll out all the great produce and like a little extra of like the imported, let's say, mushrooms or shoyus. And the place is packed and it's vibrant. And inside of that little food court or the debachika, there's like 11 different individually themed stalls from soba to udon to donburi to ramen to yakitori, and you order a couple bites of food, and then you shop for your groceries, and
I
it's
love
totally
that.
immersive. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. I want to try that. Okay. Best thing you ever ate?
Oh, that's a really broad one. I'll say my favorite dinner experience I ever had is with La Mijan with my wife when we were young parents. We were away from our kids for maybe only the second time. It was a meal we really couldn't afford. It was before they had a Michelin. I think they're a 2-star now. But it was just a great tasting menu and it ended with rice pudding. So rice pudding is the formal answer, but the time and place is with my wife in Paris in the fifth at La
Oh,
Mijan.
that's nice. Ooh, I love good rice pudding. Okay. One ingredient that you always have to have in your kitchen.
One ingredient I always have to have in my kitchen
It's a must.
is, man, I would just say current harvest extra virgin olive oil. I mean, I think I always have at least
Mhm.
5 different ones in my house because I just kind of love it. But like the most premium, beautiful green gold that you can afford.
Okay. One food you absolutely hate or ingredient you do not want in your kitchen.
Well, I have a taste of, I think hate is a strong word. I don't like to use it even when it comes to culinary things, but I
Okay.
have an aversion to beef liver and really there's this Hungarian sausage. If anyone has Eastern European lineage, it's called harka. It's a rice and lung and blood sausage that's cooked really hard. That's I would just all due respect. If you enjoy it, it kind of reminds me of glue. So those two things I'm really a fan of.
Okay. You don't like eating glue. Okay. So if
Yeah.
you could cook, actually, let me ask you this. What is the idea for you of a perfect dinner?
I mean, a perfect dinner for me has less about the food than it has to about who's there. And I just, I as long as my wife and my kids are there, the dinner's perfect. That's all I want. And I want no digital devices anywhere to be seen. Just conversation and a great roasted chicken or great fried chicken and caviar.
Well, everybody has to follow you on your Instagram because I love the
Yeah,
interaction with you and your kids and your wife.
yeah,
It's great.
yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, we kind of took the filter off this year.
Yeah,
We're
I
just
love
like,
it.
I just think people want a glimpse into our home
Yeah.
kitchen and see how we actually are. And
Yeah.
you're
The
not always going to find
teenagers.
a recipe, but you're going to see some teenagers. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
awesome. Okay, if
yeah.
you could cook for anybody, anywhere in the world, who would that be?
If I could cook for anybody anywhere in the world, I would go with Ludovico Einaudi, the concert pianist who's coming here to Chicago
Ooh.
next month. This is on my bucket list of concerts to see. I have listened to him for, man, 20 years now, and I've just been dying as a former orchestra member and an
Ah,
appreciator of all art. It's just someone I would love to cook food for.
wow. Well, if he's going to be in town, you need to get your people to work on that for you, don't
We
you?
got it. Fingers
Okay.
crossed, prayers in the air.
Oh, who would you say has been your biggest influence in your life, whether it be culinary world or just in general?
I mean, I think in terms of culinary influence, it most certainly has to be Michael Simon, my former mentor and dear friend and fellow Sad Browns fan.
Uh-huh.
We talk regularly. I use him for advice, and I just genuinely love what he's done. I think in
Mhm.
terms of the biggest influence on me, it's my wife for sure. I mean, she's the only reason I'm here today.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Michael Simon because he was actually in the 24 and 24 as well with you guys. So you said mentor and someone who's become a good friend. What is it about the two of you that you think enables you to have that closeness in so many aspects of life?
Yeah, I mean, I think we worked together in the early 2000s. I opened restaurants for him and with him, and we maintained that friendship for a while. He really introduced me to Food Network early on, and I think that our Midwestern values and sort of upbringing have allowed us to sort of maintain that friendship.
What do you guys do when you get together? What's fun about hanging out with him?
I mean, I think we're both pretty funny people, and you put the
Uh-huh.
two of us in a room with our love of food, and you just never know what you're going to get. Yeah.
I love it. So tell me what's going on with your plans for the future. Obviously, Kindling is doing well. Any other plans for opening other spots in Chicago or anywhere else? What do you got going on?
I think that's a great question. No, I mean, I think it's a very boring but very understanding answer. I've said no to everything for a long time. I only have one restaurant, not for lack of opportunity, but for absolute want.
Mhm.
And as I sort of learned from my mistakes in the past, I didn't necessarily have more happiness having multiple restaurants than I did having one. So I'm just I'm not saying I'm going to say no forever, but there's a reason why for the past 5 years I've never had more than one unit or one thing going on at a time. It's because I want to be present in my own life, present in my own space, present in my sobriety, and around for my kids while they're still here.
And when can people find you at Kindling? Because I know I went once and you weren't there and I was disappointed. So when's the
Yeah.
best spot? When's the best time to find Jonathon Sawyer in the kitchen over the wood fire at Kindling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm here every lunch and most of the dinners. I travel 1 week a month max to do TV or food and wine festivals. And if you follow me on Instagram, you could probably see if I'm in the restaurant. You could DM me, and I might be able to respond and tell you I'm going to be there. You can call the restaurant. A lot of people on the reservations ask when Chef Sawyer's there, and I coordinate with my team to make sure that they know that I am. But chances are, if you come down Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for lunch when we're the busiest that we are, you'll see me here.
Yeah, I love it. And you've got your cookbooks that people can still get a hold of. As we wrap this up, I'm just wondering. So, because I think that, like I said, you're very open and honest. And if you could give advice to anybody who maybe not just in the restaurant world, but is also struggling with their own inner demons, you talk about mental health, depression, drugs. What would you say to someone in that position, someone who's listening now that is maybe can relate to part of your story?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in moments, I felt like I was the only person who ever felt this way, right? I felt like I was the only one. I was terminally individual. And it wasn't until I sought help, professional help, and then the help of friends, that I really understood that I'm not alone and that there's a lot of people that have demons or addiction or, a gigantic ego with zero self-esteem. You know what I mean? Like there's 8 billion people on the planet now. I don't even know the number, but you're not alone. And there's a bunch of people out there that want to talk to you about it. And one of the things that I really relish in this version of my life and myself is adult friendship. And every morning, no matter what, there's about 90 minutes where I'm making phone calls to friends, family members, fellow sober people, fellow chefs, just to maintain a sense of community that's outside of the digital world, outside of the confines of what we regularly do. And I found the greatest sort of joy and support of understanding friendship as a sober person, as opposed to the person I was before, who really believed that friendship was just transactional and what do they want from me or what can I get from them. And I really relish that. So reach out to your friends, reach out to your family members, and reach out to professionals because you're not alone. And a ton of people want to hear from you and a ton of people care about you.
That's beautiful. A great way to end this. And I want to remind everybody that you can find Jonathon at Kindling. I believe you're on another Food Network competition right now, which I'm sure you're not able to reveal how that one ends up, but at least we can keep an eye on you while watching. Those are always so much fun. So thank you so much, Jonathon. If you could, leave us with any final words, what would that be?
Yeah, Sylvia, thank you so much for having me. I just love having the opportunity to be honest and open and hopefully a little vulnerable for everybody. And, phone a friend, phone a family member when you're done listening to this and relish those friendships and relationships.
Great advice. Jonathon Sawyer, see you at Kindling. This podcast is produced by Jenny Waters, original audio and music editing, Donnie Cutting, social media and promotions, Ileana Blaisdell. Thanks for joining us on Supper with Sylvia. We've loved sharing these conversations with you, and we hope you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed hosting. This wraps up our second season. We're taking a break to get ready for season 3, and we've got some exciting plans to make it better than ever. But if there's someone you think would make a great guest and you'd love to hear from them, please let us know. We'd love to reach out. In the meantime, enjoy seasons 1 and 2, share them with friends, and we'll see you back here when we kick off our 3rd big season.